you all for coming. Before I start, I just want to thank Silicon Valley Bank for their hospitality. Sanjay Modi, thank you. And where is Priya?
Yes.
Priya is there. Okay. So thank you, Sanjay and Priya, for hosting us. This is a classic, is better facility than what Thai has. So we are very happy to be here. So I just want to kind of introduce to you the high-powered delegation that has come from India. We have Dr. Rajiv Modi. He is managing director of one of the most successful pharmaceutical companies in India. Cadila or Cadila? Cadila. You guys don't make gear in India? Okay. All right. And we have Director General of CII, Mr. Chandrajit Banerjee, and I discovered that he is known as CB. So welcome, CB. We also have Mr. Deep Kapuria, and his company's name is High Tech Gear, but he's also into robotics. In fact, I had the privilege of meeting his son, who is leading that robotic company in India, and I was very impressed to see a state-of-the-art, cutting-edge robotics company that is already successful in India, and now they are trying to make it bigger back to USA here. And then we also have Mr. Rahul Munjal. How many of you have heard of Hero Honda? Used to be Hero Honda, now it's Hero. Okay, so he's part of that family, but he is an entrepreneur in his own right. He has started a very significant venture in alternative energy and a very ambitious plan. So we'll have some questions to him about that also. And finally, we have Mr. Tarun Sahni. He is a very exciting this thing, Triveni, right? Triveni is the company, and in engineering and turbines also?
Correct.
Not wind turbine, this power turbine.
Steam turbine.
Steam turbine.
Yes.
Good. All right. So before, without further ado, I think let's just get started. But before we do, let me just ask CBC to say a few words, and then you have it.
Yeah. You want me to talk about CII or India? Yeah. No, it's great to be here. Thank you very much, Venk, for this opportunity of getting this CII delegation. CII delegation, this particular delegation is known as our CEO's delegation, CEO's mission, which comes once every year into the United States. We send approximately about 15 odd delegations into United States from India. These are several sectoral delegations, etc. But this particular delegation, this is known as the CEO's delegation. A couple more will join us in Washington, D.C. tomorrow. This delegation comes once a year, and our primary engagements have been to talk to the U.S. administration, different wings of the U.S. In the government in U.S. Talk to the congressmen, talk to the senators, talk to the USTR, talk to the Treasury, talk to the White House on what's happening in India, and to get feedback from the government system into Indian business, so to say, so that we can work upon some of our regulatory and policy framework back home. This is the first time that we are bringing this CEO's delegation into this area, into the West Coast. We have brought many delegations. A few weeks back, we were here working with Thai also when the finance minister came into the West Coast. But this particular delegation, which engages in understanding and talking about what policy changes are happening or to get feedback on it, is coming here for the first time. And we are very excited. The day has been extremely engaging. Our meeting with Thai was absolutely great. And so we look forward to coming here with this CEO's delegation year on year from now onwards. We come around this time of the year. And this particular engagement opportunity with each one of you to talk to you about what's happening in India and what do you think should happen better is something great for us. And CII, we are the Apex Industry Organization. We work here very closely, of course, with the US Chamber, our counterpart over here. And being the Apex Industry Organization, our involvement with both industry and government back home in India is very strong. And this is a wonderful opportunity. Thank you for giving this to us.
Let me ask the first question to you.
Mike.
Mike, yeah. Sorry. So let me ask the first question to you. we hear two different viewpoints to say about the government in what 16 months or something, 15 months, 15 months actually, and we have two different viewpoints. One is that that give them time, अच्छे दिन will happen, right? And the other one that we hear is that this is nothing but in terms of policy, in terms of approach, in terms of reality at the ground level. This should be better described as UPA 3. Can you comment on that?
Yeah, we keep discussing about this particular, different ways of looking at what's happening in India. When this government, which is, as you said, 16, 17 months old, came to power, the first thing that we went to them, I remember in the first few days of their taking over, was that we have terrible this, terrible that, and I'll just give some examples of it. We talked about the Companies Bill, the Companies Act, which became the Companies Act, in the UPA 2, and this happened just a few months before elections, and the bill was passed in the parliament, and we went to the new government saying that this needs to be changed. The government says this is something which the parliament has actually passed, which has been approved. You want this to be changed. Now we know it's draconian. So we said that yes, you have a problem at hand, you need to change that, but this is something which has been done very recently. The land bill, which was also passed in the parliament, we said that also needs to be changed, because these are completely unfriendly. So we were talking to, I'm trying to say that these were huge challenges that the government faced, that things which were just passed by the earlier parliament, by both houses of the parliament, we were telling them to revisit those once again within a few months. And therefore we didn't expect quick fix solutions. We wanted fundamentals to be changed, and I think the process of changing the fundamentals, changing the huge number of changes have taken place in the Companies Bill thereafter. The land bill has gone through enough debates. Similarly, there are several items, and in fact on Monday, I was just talking to the government a few minutes back. There is going to be a study of the World Bank once again, rating all the states of India as to how they have done on ease of doing business, and some of them have done well. There were 98 issues that the government and we worked together to tell the states to improve on in terms of letting business happen. A lot of the work has been done, a lot undone. Expectations are very high. Expectations were like everything will change tomorrow. But let me just give you one figure and end there for the time being. We had an old system of calculating the GDP growth rate in India, and we have a new system of calculating the growth rate in India. Now, if you go by the old system of calculating the growth rate, we were doing something around 4.5 when the UPA 2 was handing over power. If you stick to the old system of the GDP growth rate, we would have been 4.5, 5.7. Which is a 1.2% growth in 1 year time. So in the new calculation, we are 7%. So I don't think, that is something which is a result on the ground. So it takes time for us to get into an aspirational growth rate of 10%. It takes time to change many factors that needs to be addressed immediately, but it's a process, and therefore we from the industry are still saying we'll give more time to you. But make those fundamental changes which are important. Don't do quick fix solutions, it won't work.
Okay. So Tarun, you're part of one of the largest manufacturing companies in India. Your perspective on Make in India, the perception here is that if the factors, land, labor, none of those have changed, and infrastructure has not changed. Given that, what's your perspective on how you see the Make in India campaign being, taking shape?
That's actually a very good question. I think Make in India again will take a little bit of time. It's something that was announced by Prime Minister Modi some time ago. The actuals are something that will be seen, in my opinion, through calendar 16. We're going to start seeing it in the last quarter of this year as well. It is led, frankly speaking, by accelerated government spending. That spending is happening on infrastructure and a variety of other areas. From an industry's perspective, I think Make in India has two elements to it. One is the work that we've already been doing, just at a faster pace. Chandrajit mentioned growth rates accelerating from the 7% now moving towards a double-digit rate. The expectation is that industry will participate in that. The Make in India program will be an essential and critical component of that journey. The other element that I'd like to talk about is defense. Now, that is a critical area with the type of offset program that we have today, where 30% has to be manufactured locally. That is an entire sector that is going to grow at a phenomenal pace. So we're going to see Make in India not just in conventional areas, but in a whole host of areas where India was actually importing technologies, importing manufactured goods, importing services also to some extent. I think we're all fairly impatient. We'd like to have things done yesterday if we could. My particular view is we will see it happen, and I think the start of it is going to happen in the last quarter of this year.
We'll come back. I think first we'll ask one set of questions. We'll come back, and then you guys can jump in. So question to you. Very ambitious targets for energy generation in India, and yet some of the economics you see around how power gets generated, distributed, and all those things are still broken. There doesn't seem to be any fundamental change. So your perspective on how realistic these targets are?
Yeah. So before I answer that, let me also touch a little bit about what CB was saying as to what this government inherited. When this government came into power, they inherited a system where coal had become a scam. The entire industry was a bad word, right? So they came in very quickly in 4 or 5 months. They put together one of the largest e-tenders that the country had ever seen, and successfully tendered out most of the coal mines. Now, having done that so successfully, I think was an achievement by itself. And after that, what's happened is, in this year alone, the coal output has gone up. I'm not sure, I don't have the exact numbers with me, but I heard that it had almost gone up 8, 9, 10%. So the output of coal has gone up, despite of all the changes it has gone through the sector. Other than that, the output of overall energy has gone up. Other than that, energy efficiency in the country has gone up by 3.5%. So overall, the power sector has increased almost 4 or 5% in the last 1 year. Then on top of this, they've announced a 175 gigawatt renewable plan by 2022, of which 100 megawatts is solar. Of the 100 megawatts, gigawatt. Of the 100 gigawatt, 60 is grid connected, 40 is rooftop, and 75 gigawatts is wind. Now, last year, India did 1 gigawatt of solar. There were tenders, so the tenders were 12 months prior, so it takes 13 to 16 months to put it on. Last year, we had 1 gigawatt that came on. This year, 5 gigawatts have already been tendered out, and another 5 are going to be tendered out in the next 3 or 4 months. The RFP is already out. So you've already gone from 1 gigawatt of solar to 10 gigawatts per year. So if we do 10 multiplied by the number of years, we have 7 years to go. So even at this rate, we're reaching 70 gigs, right? So the reality is, there is a sea change in the power sector. So that is as far as number of units goes, or the capacity goes. What about the pricing? Even the pricing, all the tenders have now become from this NSN tender, which is out this week. All of them will be e-auctions, and there will be no paper auctions. All of them will be reverse bidding. And I think this, to a large extent, I don't think to a large extent, this has completely made it transparent. And nobody can even think of raising doubts that there might be something happening which doesn't seem kosher. So the reality is, it is all e-auction, it is there, it's a big enough pie, and the numbers are large.
So you feel very comfortable that the numbers are
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, so to achieve what they want to achieve, they've already done what they had to do in the past year and a half. So if this rate goes carry forward, if we stick on with this rate, we will reach our number.
Great, great, thanks. So, question to Deep. This is, we talk about big companies, we talk about technology startups and everything. We don't talk about much about the small, medium sector. Is there a Modi effect on the small, medium sector? Is there the things that were holding back that sector? Do you see a fundamental change in now?
You know, you asked a question which is very, very pertinent. And in any ecosystem, unless there is a small and medium sector and it's thriving, it cannot, no sector can perform. Not that that sector was never there, it was there, and in many ways was challenged by the issues which are very consistent in terms of primarily good governance issues, again the same issues of ease of doing business, and smaller the entrepreneurs, more the issues. And the primary aspect and the aim for the government was that how the cost of compliance and cost of basically doing business or transacting business, how that can be brought down for the small and medium entrepreneur. Now, in that set, there has been a lot of work. And the work has been done not only at the central level, because there is nothing, many of these subjects are actually subjects which are combined with the center and the state. So the states have moved very, very fast on these issues. And what Chandrajit just said, that there is a competitiveness between states to prepare an ecosystem where the industry can thrive. And that means that for the small and medium companies, there would be beneficiary in terms of availability of seed capital, availability of capital. That's one of their main issues always in that sense. And in the last year, despite the slower growth, the industry grew to about 15%. And if we see the small and medium companies, they actually make about 40% of the manufactured goods and nearly export about 35% of the merchandise exports happen from that sector. And that sector, and I'll just give you an example of the entrepreneurial spirit which is so visible. Just about, I think 2 months back, I was on a panel, jury panel by Google, to say that which are the startups which are using the e-platform to build their businesses. And there were thousands of applications, and they narrowed down, and the jury was presented with the last 25. And they were not from the large cities. One would have imagined that the major part would have come from Bangalore or Hyderabad. They were from tier 2 cities. A couple of guys coming from Ludhiana, a couple of guys coming from Gujarat's second tier cities. And they were doing some amazing work on the platforms. So the brick and mortar companies also leveraging the e-platforms to move it forward. So it was very fascinating to see the vibrancy which is getting into India. That was not really visible. I must also tell you that I did mention the two things. One is the cost of compliance and the cost of transacting business, and that's what really makes a country competitive and the footprint more competitive than other places. And this has been taken very seriously. The DITP, that is the Department of Policy and Industrial Promotion, Policy and Promotion, has taken this literally as a mission mode program. and they are working very hard to see that the compliance really happens, and this was the states competing within this is one of that. In the other sense, if you see the competitiveness index, which is brought out by the World Economic Forum every year, we don't rate too well. But let me qualify it by saying that there are pockets of excellence. If we look at companies, for example, in our sector, the auto component sector, within the four walls of the companies, they are highly, highly competitive. And we as a company are exporting to the North Americas, and many of the components are single sourced. So if you're driving an SUV, a GM SUV, the four-wheel drive gear and shaft will be from our company on a 100% basis. If you're driving a Dodge Ram which is powered by a Cummins engine, the engine gears will be 100% from our company. So it's not that that nothing is happening there, but obviously at a global level or at each and every corner of the country, whether it's competitive, definitely not. But the things are visible that as the infrastructure grows, as the compliance to these issues of e-biz, which is being more and more talked about, and that is where Digital India comes in. The Prime Minister has mandated that the interface between the government and the businesses needs to be reduced, and they just need to be on the e-platform. And that is happening. And when that happens, automatically the cost of compliances come down. And the cost of transaction comes down with the goods and services tax, which is on the anvil. I mean, it has been, the last minute shake did happen, but we are hoping that it will get through. And that will make a major difference. So we are seeing that the Indian footprint will become more and more competitive, and specifically for those companies where within the four walls they are already competitive.
One does get the sense that India is on the move. I think there seems to be consensus. Slight change of this thing with the pharmaceutical industry. Generics, people know that India is a powerhouse and your company is a big factor of this. But when will Indian pharmaceutical industry come up with their position with trial?
So, I don't have the crystal ball, but I think very shortly, to answer in brief, but I think for this audience, it's very important to know that through the 60 plus years of the history of our country, through entrepreneurship, dedicated, loyal, patriotic entrepreneurs, and good governance, government policies, we are so proud that India is one of the most favored destinations for making affordable, high quality generics in the world. I keep on saying this at every 2 hours, we have so many meetings. But 1 in 10, I know my colleagues are going to get totally pissed off 6 times today, but 1 in 10 tablets consumed by America is made in India. That's the impact, in spite of all that you hear of the competition in a very high technology area like life sciences. So, what is the message? The message is over the last decades, an ecosystem has been created in India to develop, re-engineer, and make pharmaceuticals. That's the beginning. That's the step one, like a toddler, make the first steps. These companies have now grown in scale because of the ability of generics. The company is now significant sizes operating in India, outside India. And when you have scale, you have resources. And when you have resources, a good management generally would deploy these resources for the future. So I think there is this access capital which has been generated because Indian pharma has become global. And these funds are getting back within the four walls of that company in that research. So there are lots of companies of high revenue and significance in India who already started investing to create an ecosystem within their company to bring out innovation. So that's actually happening. And this not happening, it's happening over time. But that favored with the industry-government partnership for having a sustainable, clear, transparent policy for manufacture of pharmaceuticals, the development of pharmaceuticals, and for innovation of pharmaceuticals. This evolution is not happening overnight. But such progressive policies are in end, which will enable that more and more resources are available from within the company. In Indian brains, I have shown the strength, and with the support of the government, I think it's very, very likely. Our company, for example, has already got some innovations, but there are less examples. I don't want to go into personal. But I think there is a huge number of progressive companies in India who invest significantly. With only this one dream and intention, can we make something from India?
Will that change India's this thing?
And the last question, and the government has already made another progressive step, which is it has already announced an increase of the amount of spend, the percentage of GDP on healthcare. So I think, we hear a lot of things about negative, but these are actual steps. It has never done in the last so many decades. So there are very concrete steps. And remember, this is Prime Minister's own words. India is a poor country. Please understand, in comparison with the benchmark, and I don't want to be misunderstood at all. But relatively speaking, in terms of size of the economy, one of my colleagues was telling me that the size of one of the big electronic company, IT company, is the size of a GDP. So India is still a small port, but there's a huge potential of us exceeding over the next 10, 15 years.
Okay, I think we are running short of time, so I'll open the floor for any questions. So these guys have a hard limit to say about 8 o'clock, so we'll take only about 4 or 5 questions and start early.
I'm Ravi. My question is related to education or lack thereof and its impact on the industry growth.
Education.
Yeah.
Literacy levels. Literacy level in India is not as high as other industrialized countries. Does it have an impact to see on productivity, on competitiveness, and all this? Yeah, okay. Let's just that's a good idea. Let's just ask all the questions and then they can decide to see who to answer. Naresh?
So, since Modi took over as Prime Minister, the oil price has dropped from $100, not because of him, just world oil price has dropped from $100 a barrel to $40. One of the excuses that India had that all their foreign exchange was being sucked up by the oil imports. And now the oil import bill has gone down, but the Indian currency, the rupee, continues to weaken. Can you answer why this is happening?
Okay. Any other questions? Yes, right here.
We have heard a lot about the smart cities, that program that is been launched by the government. Can anybody talk about what impact it has in the entrepreneurial spirit of India, or how do the entrepreneurs take advantage of what is going to happen, including the status of what really is happening in the smart city program?
Hi, I'm Rakesh Vaidyanathan with the Jai Group. So what we wanted to know is Mexico has suddenly become very competitive. China is not that competitive anymore, but a lot of other candidates are coming up, especially with the shale gas and the wage bill frozen. Mexico has suddenly become very competitive for North American market. So how will India compete with countries whose energy costs are extremely low, and they're also going to take some of the China pie as China becomes less and less competitive?
In the back. Back. Here.
Hi. My name is Ashish Asthana, and I'm an entrepreneur in the field of solar energy. And I've listened to quite a bit about India's ambitious solar energy program, especially with the new government coming in. So can you give us a point check of how things are going on an execution level in terms of, I think there was a statistic quoted about the number of tenders going, but what's the actual execution on the ground? And also, what are the policy changes that you as industrialists would look for to continue investing in this space? Thank you.
One on the back, all the way in the back.
Hi, good evening. Kameshwar Kiranki. I'm an entrepreneur. Quick question. We have such a brilliant panel who are perhaps the brightest minds in their respective industries, be it from the pharmaceutical or from energy sector, for example, as well as auto. That said, what is the space for innovation in next 5 years? What do you see the growth of innovations in India? Until that happens, the fundamental changes afterward won't happen, right? So what do you see? How does India progress across next 3 years or beyond? I would like to have your perspective on that. Thank you.
So you're asking, specifically you're asking how is India going to innovate or the potential for innovation, is that the question?
I mean, there are two parts of the question. For example, on the auto, India is already number 6 in the world and heading to number 4 by 2016. But how will it get to top 3? Perhaps that's one question. Even in pharma, we are in generics, but now recently the biologics, biosimilars are there. How are we advancing there? So these things need basically strong underlines where you have to build bottom up also rather than just putting $1 billion and magic happens. It doesn't happen that way. So I want to understand those strong underliers. Then we know, yes, in 3 years we are on the home run.
Right. Any other question? We'll take one more question. Okay, good. Well, there's none, so let's take one. Oh, there is one.
Yeah, I have driven Honda cycle and Honda motorcycle in India, and I would love to drive here in California.
Life insurance.
Actually, yes, but I'm just segue to what the young gentleman asked for innovation. I was wondering, there's a general perception that innovation has not happened in India so far. You mentioned the concept of this. First of all, do you all agree with that? If not, can you give us examples of highly innovative products that have come out which are globally well recognized?
Okay. All right. Thanks. So, let's
Yeah, I think we'll leave it open. Yes, of course. I'll just pick and choose two or maybe one, and I really like this question on literacy, more on the economic perspective. Yes, literacy is a challenge, and if you really look at the type of demographic dividend and advantage that we talk about India in terms of the youth population, it becomes a huge challenge for us when we talk about them not to be trained, not to be educated, not to be literate, not to be literate. So there is this Skill India program which we have engaged in. In fact, that's going to be a very key area of work going forward. You know, today what has also happened, we've been talking since morning about the devolution of powers to the state. If you really look at the percentage spent on education as a part of the GDP, there has been some discussion whether the central government has cut its allocated spend on education, primary education, vis-a-vis previous years. Well, what has happened is there is a lot of it has actually been given to the states to spend. So education being primarily a state subject, there has been a lot which has been actually today given to the states in terms of spending or investing into literacy programs and to see the state spend. So the total spend has actually increased because one is trying to route that through the states, which is extremely important because implementation will take place there. Second, as I talked about the skill program, and the private sector is coming in a big way in terms of the skill in the Skill India program. With the creation of the National Skill Development Corporation, the private sector has been asked. The CII manages today 12, and we have been asked to do a 13 sector skill council, which are all private sector driven, where private sector is putting in money. And we have analyzed and studied skill gaps in the country of class 8 drops, not just class 10, but class 8 dropouts, boys and girls, and looking at the type of skill gaps in different states and different sectors. And we are trying to see how to make them employable. And these 13 sector skill councils range from things like advanced manufacturing to maybe even hairdresser to a plumber. So different types of skill sets are being talked about. And we are at this point in time in India seeing a change in how we celebrate some of the best champions of skills, because we've never celebrated skills. We never, and today if you see what's happening, there is something called, very interesting, which is something called Skills Olympics which takes place, and India never participated in it. It's for the first time this year we've seen Indian skilled, it could, as I mentioned, it could be a salon, a hairdresser or a plumber or an electrician or a mason who are participating in these world championship, and we are celebrating their best performances. So it is giving due dignity to some of these aspects which are going to be very important in terms of seeing a skilled India. And so it's being dealt with very strongly, and we do think that the entire demographic dividend that we talk about, 50% of our population to be below the age of 25, might turn out to be a complete nightmare from a dividend unless we address this issue. So this has top priority both for the private sector and the government. Maybe on the power side, if you would like to take on it.
Yeah, before I answer the execution of solar, let me just give you a fun fact here. In the past 4 months, the rupee has depreciated 3.7%, and that's primarily because of the threat of interest rates going up in the US, as compared to the other BRIC nations which have devalued between 8 and 19%. So be it Brazilian, Russian, Chinese. So, as compared to the rest of the economies, our currency is actually doing really well. And I'm only talking about the volatility in the last quarter.
The interest rates haven't gone up in the US.
Yeah.
Was
The
that?
interest rates haven't gone up, they're still at zero.
I know, but the fear of them going up, so every week they say, oh, they're not gone this month, next month. Interest rates in the US.
But in a sense, those countries like Brazil and Russia
Yeah.
benefited because of the commodity boom.
Yeah.
And when the commodity prices crashed, so naturally they are a little weaker.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think in general India is doing great because of this.
So, talking about the energy space. So, most of so since the new government is coming, since Piyush Goyal and his team came in, the first thing they did was, of course, go and tell the world about their big plans, and they attracted large investors from all over the world. So we see the likes of SoftBank, who's announced $20 billion, or Sun Edison, who's announced $5 billion, or so if I were to add up these 4 or 5 large players and how much commitment they've announced, so there is already a commitment of over 50 or 60 billion dollars amongst 7-8% of these large companies. So there is your investor part. Are there people who are willing to put money? Yes, there are, because they have made commitments, and all these are fairly large people who wouldn't be committing if they didn't mean business. On the second hand, are there enough projects in the pipeline? Especially in solar, yes, there are, because we've already seen tenders happen in the past few months, and we expect them to happen in the next few months. As far as execution on the ground goes, are there enough people? I don't think so. I think the biggest dearth today in solar, in renewable in India is lack of skilled manpower. Because the size of the industry was 1 gigawatt and now it's gone to 10 gigawatt. So we have a huge problem. There is not enough skilled people in the industry. And the other is land. Land continues to be very, very challenging. Yeah. And as far as the supply of solar panels go, it's all coming from China. And they have, so India is taking over, so Japan was doing 10 gigawatts a year till recently. So India is going to replace Japan's market on the world stage.
A number of questions on innovation.
Yeah, that's right.
So, I'm just taking on the question on the innovation specifically to the auto sector. In terms of the auto sector, I think today we are the largest producers of branded motorcycles.
Yeah.
We make 16 million of them. And without innovation, and mainly the players are the largest single manufacturer is Hero. So without innovation, that process could not have happened, and the competition is between the best brands possible. Now, when we talk of innovation, and innovation within the country does not mean, and I must also sort of amplify the so-called Make in India Mission Mode program. It's not about made in India, it is make in India, and you can play in any which part of the value chain. And thus, the major part of innovation which is happening is in each and every area, and it is the larger companies and even the MNCs which are doing this in the Deccan Triangle. The Deccan Triangle constitutes of Hyderabad, Chennai, and Bangalore, and there are close to about 200,000 engineers who are employed in these centers, and these are internal work. So if there's Philips is possibly doing the frugal innovation majorly in India, and thus making healthcare products which are so affordable all over the world. Bosch is doing that. GM has about 7,000 to 8,000 engineers working in that Deccan Triangle, and Wipro can tell you so that their presence all over, and I think they are highly innovative products in not only the software space but also in the hardware space. Let me talk also about the competitiveness vis-a-vis Mexico. Mexico has gained ground in terms of the auto sector. Today, US fast cars, including what is sold here, is close to about 16 million, and today about 5 million come from Mexico. And that is primarily because of the NAFTA. The kind of trade agreement, which is the free trade agreement which is there in that sense, and Brazil totally going down because of the aspects, economic aspects of the policy framework which had. So a lot of manufacturing has and assembly has moved to Mexico, and that's the truth. Are we competitive vis-a-vis? And I'm just taking, because just making a blanket statement that we are competitive or non-competitive, I'm just saying towards a sector. So sector specific, if we were to talk about precision auto components, many of the companies, and that is company based, are competitive. We have replaced Mexican suppliers to supply into the US, but in the long term, we'll have to have a footprint in Mexico. I'm not ruling that out, and we are looking forth for that. So the supply chains have moved in a way that is totally partly by the legislative aspect. But if we say that in the revival of the economic aspect in US itself, US itself has resurrected barriers for manufacturing to make it preferential to manufacture in the country, and that is the truth. So there are aspects where one has to look at the supply chains and how they are functioning in the whole country, and I can talk a lot about how the auto supply chains are functioning. In the auto supply chains today are not supply chains anymore, they are networks. And each and every company is looking at certain specific country. So there is an issue of near sourcing. What is US doing is also resourcing what is called, getting back some part of the manufacturing back into the US or back to the NAFTA region. So there is a complexity of the supply chains, how they are operating. And within that supply chain complexity, each company has to find its space rather than a country. Today, any product for that matter is like it's made in a global village. So no country can say that this is totally made in a space. So you talk about the iPhone, you talk about any of the automobiles which you drive. There are numerous parts which are coming from all over the world. The assemblies are happening somewhere else. There's a back and forth import export which is happening within the ASEAN period, in the ASEAN region. The powertrain aspect itself, Toyota is making the transmissions in India, is making the engines in Thailand, and that is being exchanged. So the complexity of supply chain will always look for the easiest and the best place for that market to operate in. And thus, in that sense, the competitiveness has to be seen in a much larger lens than a narrow lens. I'll leave it at that.
One point I would like to make is that what you're describing is excellence in execution. What India lacks is, in my opinion, in terms of innovation, is where globally somebody can say, iPhone is an Apple product, right, or it's a US product. And it's that concept level, branding level, how you attain that, I don't know. But once India gets there, that's what real innovation is. Not only you control it from idea, concept to execution.
Let me add to that. I don't necessarily agree with you. I think we are in a world where disparate supply chains are par for the course. I was reading an article on the flight over to the US that for a Dreamliner, there are over 1,000 companies that supply components, and the components are manufactured in over 50 countries. So there are centers of excellence all over the world that manufacture different things, and there are certain key skills. Now, I'll give you specific examples. As far as innovation centers in manufacturing are concerned, SKF, TAG, Timken, GE, these are large industrial houses, have all got their innovation centers in and around India, employing thousands of people working on next generation technology, and also establishing manufacturing presences within the country. Siemens, MAN Group, Voigt, another, billion-dollar conglomerates, global conglomerates, have their innovation centers. Now, Indian companies themselves are increasing their R&D spend, are improving innovation. How much? Our average spend is about 1%. It's not enough. It needs to double, it needs to triple, it needs to grow at a much faster pace. So the innovation, in my view, that is happening in India is through multinational firms who've invested in India, utilizing the workforce, the trained workforce, the engineers, the young men and women who come out of our education system, and getting those ideas developed on and creating products for the world. For Indian corporates, that is the next challenge. It's how to actually own that product. Somebody said Apple is a US product. Well, over the next 10 years or so, you will see that, because the investment into R&D is happening. It's got tax write-offs, tax benefits. Now it's very, very clear. And more so, we're going to see investments in manufacturing and innovation. And it will be low cost, because what the Indian market needs is a different cost structure that is applicable to the Western world.
I think we are approaching the time limit here, so I just want to take this opportunity to thank all of you to come on this way and talk to us. So we appreciate that. Thank you very much. to thank people who put this thing together. This is from CII Shumani Dash, and from Thai, Sai, and Deepti Desai. So thank you. Thank you.